I think we can all agree that the stats in this game could be a little complex to understand. And of course, there's gonna be times when you're not sure which one to prioritize. On this occasion, we will submerge into the world of stats to take a closer look at HP and defense in order to identify which is the best option for your favorite character. So let's dive in. HP and defense. Two stats that have entered into debate because establishing their effectiveness is sometimes complicated. This game has so many passive abilities that if you feel kinda tanky, identifying the reason behind that could be really tricky. Was it the traits? Was it the metal, the support, etc.? This video will be dedicated to those tryhard or veterans who want to know absolutely everything possible about Bounty Rush to get an advantage with making their builds. That's why we'll deal with topics that can be somewhat complex, but believe me, if you watch the video till the end, you will have much more knowledge than the vast majority of opbr players. So, to begin with, we must know that the proportional relationship between defense and HP are in a relation of 1 to 4. And how do I know this? Well, we have to check the stats that gives the defense and HP tokens that you get when you finish on S-League or Superiors on League Battle. The first one gives us 160 defense, which multiplying it by 4 is equal to the HP amount given, 640. In other words, every 4 HP is equivalent to 1 defense. So, in order to figure it out which of the stats are higher, we will have to do the math. But do not worry, this is an easy formula. Just multiply the defense by 4 and you got the equivalent on HP. We will go through every class in the game, so let's take a look first at the attackers. This is Cracker, the attacker with the highest HP in the entire game, with a generous amount of 10,200 to round off. Now, if we wanna compare this amount with his defense, we have to divide the HP by 4. Because remember, the ratio of HP and defense is 1 to 4. By doing that, it leaves us with the amount of 2,550, which compared to his defense, which is 241, there is a big difference to know that his HP is significantly higher. On the other hand, we have the attacker with the higher defense. This unit has a 2,369 defense. So to make the comparison with the HP, we have to multiply it by 4. That is about 9,476, while his HP is 9,527. In this case, the difference between them is almost minimal, just above 50 HP and 12 defense, in favor of the HP, that is. Unlike Cracker, who was clearly that his HP was higher. But in this case, if they are almost even, how do I decide which one to use? We will talk about more crucial factors in order to decide which stat to use, but later. So stick on. And what were the results of this? That with the attackers, not even the one with the most defense can match their amount of HP, which is greater. For them, it's better to take HP, whatever it is, if we want to take advantage of the higher stat. With this simple comparison exercise, you will be able to know if your character has more defense or more HP. But those were the attackers. Now, if we want to compare the runners, for example, the one with the most HP is Big Mom Hunger Pangs. And I know you might get confused by all these numbers, so I'ma read it like they are phone numbers. Maybe that would be a lot easier to understand. When we look at the Big Mom Hunger Pangs HP, she has a 10,160, so we will divide it by 4, giving us a 2,540 as a result, while her defense is 2,230. Here, her HP wins out. And for runners, the character with the higher defense in this game, to solve doubts that the most of us might be interested in, let's take a King, for example, since he's widely used in the current meta, and is easily top 6 in the matter of defense. He has an HP of 9,279. To compare them with the defense, we need to divide the HP by 4, and it will give us a 2,319, which compared to the defense of 2,375, we can already decide who's the winner. Exactly, For King, it would be more efficient to run defense before HP, if we want to use and take advantage of the higher stat. And what can we summarize from this? That unlike attackers, some runners do have an outstanding defense compared to their HP. As we saw, King has higher defense and Blue Big Mom had a better HP. So for them it will depend on the character you're using to know which one of those stats are higher. And I think this is no surprise. I mean, runners are the more versatile class in our game. And at this point I think you already imagine how it goes for the class of defenders. Here we note that Magellan is the defender with the highest HP in the entire game. But Brook Onigashima is also pretty close, so let's use him as an example. He has 9828 HP and 2459 defense. Let's divide the HP by 4 and it gives us 2457, which is less than its defense of 2459. By very little, but less nonetheless. Brook Onigashima has higher defense than his HP, but you could go very well with either of them. And the defender that has the most defense in the entire game, besides Sentomaru of course, is Luffy Gear 5, with a tremendous amount of 2550, which multiplying it by 4 gives us a tremendous amount of 10,200. Comparing it with his 9524 HP, it is clearly that the defense wins this time. And talking about the defenders, what can we summarize from this? That for them, unlike attackers in most cases, it is more efficient to go defense than HP, because their defense is likely to be higher, even if there's not big difference. And what did we learn in this first section of the video? That HP is better than attackers because it would almost always outperform defense. For runners, the answer depends on which one you're using. You have to do the comparative exercise 1 to 4 to know which is greater. And in the case of the defenders, most of them have a higher defense than their HP. Now let's enter the second phase of the video. We already know how to apply the 1 to 4 relationship and identify the stats on this game. What's next? Let's dive in how the stats work in this game. We must know that all the characters have different attack. Therefore, a 70% attack in Yamato hybrid form, which is the 4-star with the worst attack in the entire game, will be significantly less than a 70% attack in Pell, by example, which is one of the best attackers with the higher attack. Now, defense and attack directly interact with each other. Of course, I mean your defense and the enemy's attack. All this without counting on damage increase or reduction traits. So a high defense will generally not be very effective against enemies that have high attack. For example, if we were a defender and we were against a full attack attacker, a defense build wouldn't do much. This is because it is common for them to have high stats of attack, in conjunction with damage increase that the best characters always have. If we talk about defenders, although several have damage reduction, only a very few have defense boost, as a mainly part of his gameplay. The highest one are 70% like Brook, Luffy Gear 5, Kaido Defender, but having attackers like Shanks, Roger for example, who can reach 100% attack, or Nami Ulti who can reach a 75%, can be too scary to fight against them for those defenders. But those were the attackers. What about the runners? The amount of attack depends on the character and it's very rare to see one with an attack boost greater than a temporary 30%. So against them, the defense could be greater. The same with the defenders that I think none of them go beyond that 30% of attack increase, like Big Mom, Olin, or Kaido Defender. And that's how it's supposed to work and counter each of the best passive abilities in this game. And do not forget about the ignore attacks. I mean, the ones that ignores a complete stat, like Big Mom's Mazer Hoe or Luffy's Bajarang Gang, which ignore defense. Of course, that's an obvious counter against the higher defense defenders or characters in general. along with the ignore damage reduction attacks on characters like Low Puncture Vide or Sanji Onigashima Bufu Basto. But those were a few characters. You'll have to check them individually. And in addition to that, there is one more type of attack that can go past a higher defense or a higher damage reduction. But we will talk about that in the last section of this video. Let's continue with the second part. If, for example, we were an attacker like Zoro Extreme, one of the attackers with the most defense in this game, 2258 to be specific, and with an HP of 9192. We note that dividing it by 4, it gives us 2298, which compared to the defense is very similar. So we are facing one of the attackers with the most balanced defense and HP in the game. Knowing this, we will use it to the test, using first a build with a 70% full defense and then a 70% full HP against an extreme Luffy with medals that will give him a 70% attack increase. And of course with his own maximum attack boost. Because remember, if Luffy does boost his attack, he can go up to a 75% attack increase. Both of them will be without a party support, so we can only differentiate between medals and base stats. First, let's see this full defense Zoro. We are going to make Luffy attack us to boost his attack to the maximum, and in our second life, we will receive the attacks. Now that Luffy is boosted, let's move on to the action and prove our hypothesis. That, for attackers, is more efficient to carry HP against other attackers. To prove that, we will be doing 3 tests. First, Snake Man's skills damage. Second, how many damage Zoro receives per basics. And 3, how much the damage of Luffy's King Kong guns differs between builds, of course a skill that ignores the full defense. Let the test begin. First, with Snake Man's hit. He makes us a total of 10,864, and since our life is 8725, he automatically defeats us, activating our second life for Zoro's passive. The ratio between Zoro's damage and his total HP bar when he is at full defense is that the damage counts as a total as 124% of the Zoro's life. Now, let's see if Zoro full HP can do better. If he has only one medal, it's because my Kaido medal has a 24 full HP traits. So if you want to know how to get it, I'll leave the video up and down in the comments. Going back to the example, let's see how Zoro full life fares against Snake Man's skill. With these builds, we see that apparently Snake Man's skill does us more damage, right? Well, not quite. The total damage is a 13,500. Having a life of a 13,354, at first glance it may seem that the damage is greater, right? But to know exact results, we have to compare between Zoro's damage taken and his total HP bar when he has a full HP build. That is roughly 102% of Zoro's health. So what does this experiment tell us? That the damage we received from Snake Man's attack did 24% more damage to Zoro's HP bar when he was with full defense build. Meanwhile, Zoro only took 2% more damage than his full HP bar when he was with full HP build. Although you might think that despite everything, both hits defeated him with only one attack, because it activated the second life. But let's remember that this test is without party support, meaning that he could have just tanked the attack if he had a better support than Luffy. The second experiment will be how much HP will left when attacked with a full chain of basic attacks from Snake Man. Here we will see how much damage Zoro receives from Snake Man's total change of basics. First with Zoro full defense. Snake Man's basic left full defense Zoro with 1,702 health, out of 8,725 of total health. In other words, Zoro's full defense build left us with a 19.5% of the total health after taking the 3 hits. It is important to say that Zoro reduces damage if he is below a 50% of his HP, but in both builds, this trait will not activate. And what about a full HP build? I think that just by looking at it we can tell the difference, but we will still do the math. After the hits, Zoro has 4838 of HP left when his HP full was at 13,354. In other words, Zoro has a 38% of his total life left. And what can we summarize from this? Well, with Zoro full defense tanked attack up to a 19% of his life, while a full HP build Zoro resisted hits up to a 36% of his total life. For the attackers, the HP wins the second round. And for the third experiment, we will see how much the damage of Luffy's conch gang that ignores defense differs, although the answer may be obvious. With Zoro's full defense, we receive a total damage of 16,000. That, in relation to his total life, is a 184% of his total life. Now let's try it with Zoro full HP. In this case, we receive a 15,000 of the total life of 13,000. And you may wonder why the damage is different between these two, if in theory none of the Zoros have defense against this ability. And the answer is that abilities and attacks in this game never do the exact damage every time. In fact, the damage usually vary approximately up to a maximum of 20% due to a randomness. It is a factor that is decided by the game, so do not worry too much about it. And even though because of the randomness it did less damage, let's assume it did the same damage with the Zoro full defense build, 16,000. So the damage would be 120% of his maximum health of Zoro's full HP build. Compared to the 184 of Zoro's defense, it is an abysmal difference. And I know that the results in this case are the same. Zoro ends up being defeated in both cases. But again, keep in mind that in this fight, against other players, it won't be always like this. Luffy may receive a 30% attack reduction, from abilities like Big Mom's Mace or Hoe, causing his abilities to do reduced damage and probably preventing full HP Zoro from being defeated in that situation. And not only that, all the experiments were done without the percentage that your party gives you. That also influences a lot. So if you face the same Luffy but with a lower support percentage than yours, you will take more advantage of your HP build. And we cannot say the same about the defense build because it's of course ignored. We did know that it was a bit obvious at the end, but in this experiment for attackers, against attackers, HP wins again. With all this, do not think that the defense will always be a bad stat. Remember, I said that this does against characters that have low attack boost, like runners or defenders, because the mitigation will be applied better against them. So let's move on to the final stage of the video, pros and cons of defense. As I said, the defense is good against a low attack opponent. So let's first see how this full defense Zoro faces a Big Mom with only 7.5% attack increase on her medals, both with no percentage in their party. It is notorious that it barely does us a 70 to 80 damage, that in relation to his life, an 8,000, it will be more or less 1% of our life per Big Mom's basic. And if you wonder that 90 damage that comes out constantly, that's because of the flame that always does the same damage. It doesn't matter. On the other hand, with a Zoro with full HP, Big Mom's basic attack are doing us a 300 to 400 damage, which in relation to the life of 13,000 would be more or less like 3% of our life each basic attack. We can notice the difference. We take more damage per basic attack with our HP build than our defense build. And what can we summarize from this? That the defense is good against characters that do not have that much attack increase in their medals or in their traits. But against attackers, the HP steals the best stat. Against runners depends on who it is you're facing on, and if we are going against defenders, the defense is also a better option, because they don't usually have a high attack boost on their metal traits. The stats are balanced between the classes if we look at it that way, and it is extremely good, because you'll have to know what build are you using before fighting an enemy. If you're a wise player, you will first look at the 1:4 ratio between defense and HP on the character you're using, that we learned at the beginning of the video, and then build based on that. If you go a full HP build, you will have advantage against other attackers, and if you go more defense, you will have an advantage against defenders. And again, against runner, it depends on the characters you're facing on. And almost approaching to the final verdict, it should be noted that there are some exceptions to the rule. First, if your character has some kind of permanent or consistent defense boost, it is done very often or easily, whatever the role is, such as Shirohige Prime, who has permanent boost up to a 50% if an enemy is defeated, or King, who boosted up to a 30% defense every time he uses his flying skill too. So easy and so simple. For them, the defense could be more effective than the HP. If your character has a unique heal or shield, the HP could be better. For example, for the first case we have Marco the Phoenix, whose healing is a specific number when he uses his skill 2, unlike the percentage healing that runners have when capturing flags. Look at it this way: if you had 200 HP heal, in which situation would you benefit the most? With a full defense having a life of 1000, or with a full HP having a life of 1700? The correct answer is with more HP, because it's like it has more life capacity to store for that healing. And for the shields, the answer is simpler. The more HP you have, the more shield you will have. That's why characters like Uta, Yamato or Reiju goes pretty good with that, especially Yamato hybrid form. But do not sleep on defense. It also depends for the mitigation you will have. And third, you remember that earlier in this video we talked about a type of attack that ignores both defense and damage reduction? Well, there are both types of it, directly and indirectly. Directly, there are characters like Luffy X, Big Mom, Nami Onigashima, Luffy Gear 5 and Hit Low, specifically Hit Extreme with his Punk Vice, that ignores all your defense, along with the skill 2 of Luffy's Gear 5 form. One Bajarang or Giant could be fatal against characters like Blue Kaido or Onibrook that relies heavily on their defense. And there are characters that reduce it through skills like Kamusari, Shanks Marineford with his Griffon Slash, Uta's skill 2 and Ulti's also skill 2, which all of them reduces the opponent's defense by 10%, except for Ulti, which reduces it by 30%, which is worse. Or even Zoro's charged basic attack, which we know that reduces enemies' defense up to a 20%. And just as there are many other characters that reduces all or part of the defense. Now, to that, add the attack boost that they can have, and this could be terrible if you only focus on having full defense on your medals. And those who ignore it indirectly are the percentage damage. We can find them in skills and effect states. For example, King's teleportation, skill 1, will deal up to a 40 to 50% damage of the opponent's max health, no matter how much defense you have, no matter how much damage reduction you have, he will always do the same. Other minor ones such as Akaino's incineration, which is 4% for 8 seconds, that is 32%, or even worse, Yamato's frostbite, that can do up to 80% damage of the max HP of the opponent if applied perfect, and 3 times of course. Again, regardless of your defense, it will do the exact amount of HP percentage damage. In these cases, neither does the defense nor the HP will matter. In addition to those, there are few characters that can ignore defense indirectly because of the fixed damage. not to be messed with the fixed percentage damage. This is different. The best known is Hybrid Kaido and of course Unmasked King, Albert, that both of their skills applies only if the opponents have a 70% or more of their max HP. For Kaido is a 5000 additional damage, and for Albert is a 3000 additional damage. It will always do the same no matter how higher your defense is. But at least there is a way to reduce it, and of course is with damage reduction. But only if that damage reduction is applied with skills like Roger's skill 2, Robin Gigantefleur, or Zoro's Ashura, which reduces 70% of the damage received, reducing also that fixed damage. With this full HP Zoro and 13,000 life, he has a 7263 left after the attack of Kaido. That is a 54% of his life bar remaining. On the other hand, with the full defense Zoro, this fixed damage is little, because we will have 3724 left of a total of 8000. That is, we have a 37% of our remaining HP. This difference is noticeable, and by a lot. Then, after having learned all the above, I think we can already know what are the pros and the cons of HP and defense. And we can affirm that there are more defense builds counters, if we want to call it that way. There are too many skills, mechanics, effect states, and fixed damage that can make a fool of anyone who puts all their faith in going defense only. But on the full HP side, there is also counters such as percentage damage, but in comparison to the counters of the defense, there will never be an attack that ignores all your HP. This is only partial destruction of the life. On the other hand, with the defense, it can completely ignore that stat. Knowing it all, how would I build Zoro, for example? That the poor guy has been used as a punching bag throughout the video. At maximum level, we will have 9 metal spaces for extra traits. And knowing the maximum per stat, which is 70%, and using only 18% tokens, I will distribute it like this. The first medal will have, of course, full attack, free 18% attack medals, the second one full HP, and since he is an attacker, he will need the top attack. So the first box of the third medal will be for the attack 18. And with that, we reach a 70%, of course, maximum of the attack. Then I have 2 spaces left. Here I would put 2 defense, because HP is more important in it, but we cannot underestimate the defense either. In this way, we would be going with a 70% attack, 54% HP, and 36 defense. We don't rely heavily on defense, so attacks like Luffy's King Kong Gun or Luffy's Bajarangugan won't devastate us. But we will keep a little resistance to mitigate the enemies with lower attack stacks. And in the case that you are a veteran and you were able to get a 24% HP tokens, here you will take an advantage, because in a single medal you can get a 70% HP, which is in my case. The best medal in the entire game from you can use your full HP 24% is of course Kaido Bounty Fist. Then in the second medal I have a full attack of 54%, and in the last 2 defense and 1 attack, for a total of 70% attack, 70% of HP, and 36 defense. Which is the most balanced if your character is balanced in stats like Zoro or Nikashima. But hey, I know it's been a long video, but I thought it was important to make an ultimate video of how important stats are for the game. I know some of you are very precise when using their medals, so am I know it myself. And I'm sure that they will be fascinated with this. So for more videos like this, please hit the subscribe and like button. My name is Hit4U and I hope you enjoyed the video. Please feel free to check out my older videos, because they are good as this one. We will see next time. Goodbye!